Newcomb Construction is a family-owned design-build general contractor. We work using the concrete tilt-up method. We cast our own concrete wall panels on the job site, and then we tilt them up. What I really love about our job is working with the clients. They strategize and dream for their own company. We're part of it.
Welcome to Cap Times Power Hour. I'm Paul Fanland, publisher and president of the Capital Times, and it's great to see all of you out here tonight. Appreciate you coming out in this cold. We've been hosting these conversations since the fall of 2022, and last year we moved these sessions to the afternoon, the end of the workday, as opposed to breakfast, and it seems to be resonating with people, and so we're happy to see you. If you're a first-time attendee, we welcome you and are really glad you're here, and if you're a return attendee, we, of course, really value your loyalty. I'd like to again thank Telisa Yancy, Enterprise President of American Family Insurance, for agreeing to appear with us tonight. Could we welcome her? My goal is to not spend very much time before we get to the program, so if you'd like to learn more about her ascent to leadership, you can look at the handout that's at each of your tables. And of course, I'd like to welcome our wonderful regular moderator, Mark Richardson. Please give him a hand. And I need to take a minute to thank our sponsors, without which these events would not be possible. The Burrish Group at UBS, Newcomb Construction, American Family Insurance Championship, the Network for Health, Technology, and Innovation Incorporated, and Godfrey & Kahn. And our supporters, the Edgewater, Cargo Coffee, and Hinckley Productions. We appreciate them all, and we appreciate you. With that, I'll turn it over to Mark, and we can go from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. So let's give one more big round of applause for Telisa coming out tonight. You know, I heard she doesn't do a ton of these things, so this is a big damn deal right now, and you're all part of it, right? You're all part of it. And for those of you, show of hands, first timers. Okay. Wow, all right. We're going to have to get a bigger room, Paul. I've got some questions, obviously, for her, and you guys get to sort of go for the ride. But we'll open it up to the crowd soon, and you guys can ask questions. So if you think of something, jot it down. Someone will come find you with a mic, okay? Let's say you grew up in Chicago, correct?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
And could you ever have imagined, growing up in the South Side, that you would one day be president of a Fortune 500 insurance company?
Let me start by saying no, I would not have imagined that. I would like to start by saying thank you for the invitation, and thanks to everybody that's joined us, and I hope I live up to this expectation. I want to thank our board member, Tom, over here, who might have had something to do with me being on this.
Tom Zimbrick. Let's hear it for Tom.
Yes. And so growing up on the south side of Chicago, I was a dreamer. Mm-hmm. I am a dreamer. And I did dream that I would have a fruitful career in business. I was very clear about business, but I would not have imagined that I would have been at an insurance company in Wisconsin. Specifically, when I was younger and in college, my only trip to Wisconsin was to come here for I want to say it was a Sweet 8 game. I don't know what comes before the Final Four. It's either Sweet 16.
The Elite 8.
It might have been an Elite 8 or a Sweet 16 game, okay, because Illinois was playing here. And it was that infamous march that, not really March the month, but March to the devastating loss to Michigan, whom we had beat 3 different times in the same year, and then we lost to them in one of the Final Four games. But I was here, and I literally said, "Who would live in Wisconsin?" because it was so cold, and I was a young college kid, and I had gotten in the car with a bunch of other college kids to drive from Champaign, Illinois, and I had shorts on, and it was March, and it was in my brain it was going to be warm somewhat, enough for us to wear Illini shorts and all the rest of the stuff. And so, but we won here. But I was like, who would live in Wisconsin? So I would not have imagined that I would be president. I would not have imagined I would be in Wisconsin, but oh, what a wonderful opportunity it has been to spend the last 17 years of my career with American Family Insurance. What I did imagine was that I would be doing something of purpose.
There you go.
What I did imagine is that I would be doing something of impact. And I did imagine that I would be striving to make an impact on a consumer's life. I knew for sure that I wanted to work on the consumer side of the business. So couldn't imagine this, but it feels like it was always in the cards.
Are you still running around in shorts
No.
No.
Not in the
There are
wintertime.
some crazy folks. You see this, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I have one that lives with me. He's a boy who believes he can wear his basketball shorts to a game when it's -20. Which, I made him put clothes on.
We'll revisit that. Dreamer, and we'll also revisit that because that's obviously the brand positioning. We'll get into a little bit about that campaign. Now, AmFam was not your first stop in corporate America. Can you tell us some of the stops you've had, some of the brands you've worked on?
Well, I've been pretty fortunate that I think I've worked on some of the best brands in the country, including American Family. And I would like to call them what I would call cachet brands. Tom might not agree with what I'm about to say, but Ford Motor Company was my very first stop in corporate America. I had the great privilege of working for what I believe to be an iconic brand in the country, iconic in their industry and what they serve, what they represent to the American economy and global industrial complex called automotive. I left Ford, and I worked at Ford for 17 years. Today, I am equal age with Ford and American Family. So if you can believe it, I've served 17 years at Ford, and I this year made my 17th year in January. On January 5th, I turned 17 with American Family. I left Ford and went to Burger King and did some consulting, and I somehow ended up at American Family in insurance, so which was a great opportunity for me.
And we're going to get to that, how you ended up here, because it's curious. So you're a young professional. You're from Southside. You're coming up. You graduate, and you get into corporate America. What were some of the things that you learned pretty quickly once you started your work?
I think one of the things that I think all of us learn, and I appreciate you just called me young. You meant I was a young professional. I'm not necessarily young right now. But one of the first things you learn is that often we think that we're graduating from college and you will stop learning and just start working. And what I've learned, that you will be on a continuous journey to continue learning, and that it would behoove you to take that fairly seriously early in your career. One of my biggest mistakes is I got way into Ford, and I learned in about 4 years I could only speak Ford. And so I would be at my family tables, I would be with my friends from college, and my entire brain was wired around the automotive industry. And that's when I decided to go back to grad school, and I promised myself that I would never lose the curiosity for things outside of the place that I work, because I think it makes what you do at work better. The second thing I think you learn is that what you're really after is not a job, but a career and a set of experiences and a journey that leads you to being able to feel sort of those larger life goals. One of mine is impact. I want to have impact. One of mine is I've always wanted to work on consumer-based things, so I didn't want to be in a B2B type business because I think there is joy in understanding the psyche of what the consumer wants and then figuring out how you deliver it. And I think that was one of mine. I think I learned that pretty quickly. And so when you get on a journey to some people have jobs, other people have careers, and other people have this great fortune of being able to merge career and purpose together. And I think that makes for long days don't seem as long as they actually are when you can enjoy your work and you believe that it is aligning to whatever your higher purpose, higher calling is in life. So
That makes for a powerful professional if you can merge that journey with the purpose.
yes.
You said, that you didn't figure you'd be here and you didn't figure insurance. In my research for this event, I came across an insurance association Zoom call you had done. I think it was a little bit after COVID, and it was a discussion, and folks that were in the industry got to ask you questions. And you said that when you first interviewed for AmFam, that wasn't your intention. It was actually you were helping somebody else get connected. Tell us that story, because if not for that, we're not sitting here.
Right. So I had taken a job with Burger King and left a job with Burger King and I was working on a campaign in 2008. So it was a big presidential election happening back then. I quit my job, talked to my husband, was like, I'm going to work on this with a bunch of college kids that I went to school with at Illinois. At the end of that time frame, so post-November, it was time for me to find a job again. And someone else called me because they really, really, really wanted to work for American Family Insurance. I had not heard of American Family Insurance. I don't know. And part of the reason I hadn't is because for the last 17 years, I had been working for a company that I didn't need insurance. I worked for Ford Motor Company. And all of my cars were company cars, and I literally never bought insurance until I quit Ford Motor Company. And so if you understand the timing, at that time in the industry for insurance, all you had was State Farm, Geico, Progressive that were spending lots and lots of dollars in places that I lived. And American Family was not doing business in Michigan at the time that I was there, and it might have been in some states that I was in, but we were not a big budget advertiser at that time. So someone called me because they wanted to meet Lisa Backus, and Lisa Backus happened to be our head of marketing at American Family Insurance, but she and I were connected at our time at Ford Motor Company. So literally somebody called me to say, you know this person, you're connected to her on LinkedIn, will you introduce me to her? And not knowing Lisa well enough, I knew I wasn't going to give them Lisa's phone number without calling Lisa. So when I called Lisa to say, "Hey, Lisa, apparently you're at American Family Insurance." I was not with anybody at that moment. The last time she and I talked, I was at Burger King. I had left Ford before she left Ford, and I'm not working for anybody right now. But this person really wants to come work for you at wherever you are in Wisconsin. And she says, I will take that person's call if you will interview. And I go, well, I have no interest in coming to Wisconsin. And she said, well, you don't have to come to interview seriously. I just want to show the folks in HR what a good marketing candidate looks like. And so, and she kind of tricked me a little bit, but so.
Thanks. I'm glad she did.
And so she goes, just come and have dinner with me, prepare for I go, okay, I'll prepare for the interview like I really want the job. So of course I'm now reading about the company that I've never heard of. I'm doing my research to prepare and do this woman who I admired greatly a service of setting the standard. She's like, this industry doesn't do a ton with marketing. They don't know what a great marketing talent looks like. Oh, okay, I'm gonna do a good job for Lisa because I literally admired her. She was one of the icons of women at Ford Motor Company. Not a heavy female industry is automotive. So I'm studying it and I'm preparing and I'm going, how come I don't know about this company? And then I call my dad. And I go, have you ever heard of this company, American Family Insurance? Because honestly, the only insurance companies I knew were State Farm. They spent a lot of money. I knew Geico. I knew Progressive. And that was that. And I grew up in Illinois. I didn't even know Allstate at that point. I knew Allstate as this place that used to be in Sears because that's where they got birthed out of. They got birthed out of Sears. I was like, what? What is that place? But anywho, so I'm preparing, and I call my dad, and I go, have you heard of this company? Who is our insurance company? He goes, oh, yeah, I know who American Family is. That's who is our insurance company. It's been protecting my business all of your life. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. So my dad sang the jingle for me. So the first time I heard the jingle being sang, it was my dad singing it for me. So, which is so serendipitous, so to speak. So,
for sure.
So, of course, that kind of created even more curiosity. So I came and did the interview. I got the job. At the time, Lisa was reconstituting the marketing team, sort of building a more modern marketing organization for the company. She had a bunch of jobs open at that time. I got the job that the other woman wanted, and she hasn't spoken to me since. So.
I was going to ask, what happened to the other
She has
candidate?
never spoken to me.
Oh, well,
So.
yeah, she thinks you
I took the job she wanted.
yeah, you know, but that was not your intent.
It was not.
You're trying to do her solid. So that's a great story, and one, because it's real. Two, because it demonstrates the power of professional relationships.
Yeah.
And so can you talk about, she's one of them, Lisa's one of them. Can you talk about some of the other people who have helped shape your career, your trajectory?
Yeah, I am one to believe that pretty much every leader you work for, whether great, and I've had a lot of great bosses, or maybe not so great, have some hand in shaping your career because you learn a lot from their experiences. But on my top list of people definitely includes our current CEO, Bill Westford, our former CEO, Jack Salzwedel, my former boss at Ford, who I literally talk to probably twice a week. He's retired. He left the company before I left the company, and I talk to him literally twice a week still. To some degree, I call him, and I lost my dad in 2022, but I always said I had two fathers. I had my dad, who was a laborer, owned his own business, worked for the railroad. You know, he was a work guy. Until the day he died, he thought I made no money and I didn't do anything important because other than I sold, like I used to work for Ford and now I work for American Family, two brands he respected, but my father really believed that you should work for yourself. And so even though he had a job for 40 years, he also ran a company that amount of time as well. So he would always tell me I wasn't earning enough money, and I was like, okay,
You're
Dad,
not hustling. You're not hustling enough.
So he didn't think I was hustling enough. But my dad had a big influence. But Jerry Carter is a gentleman, an older man that I actually talked to him this morning as well, on my way into work. I met him when I was interviewing at Ford, and it was my last interview. So I had been through the assessment center. I've been through the on-campus interview, the assessment center where they bring you to Michigan and put you through the rigor. 7 people have to say they like you, and then they send you to another interview. So it was pretty rigorous. And so on the other interview, I had to go to Minnesota. I go and talk to him. He was literally the first African-American I met at Ford Motor Company. So in all that interviewing process, I'd never seen another person of color. And Jerry was the first person I talked to when I walked into the Minneapolis office, and he pulled me to the side and he said, calm down. You're going to get the job. And I said, well, how do you know that? And he goes, I already know. We're just checking you out one last time. When you get to the last office, Bert's going to offer you the job, who was the regional manager, so his boss, and you're not going to take the first offer. Like, that's a big risk that he's telling me not to take the first offer. So,
and you had known him for how long at this point?
For no time at all. And so to some degree, he sort of coached me my entire career. And as I went to, so when I started with my career, I was a peon in Ford. He was a second-level manager, and most automotive companies run like the military, generally speaking, by grade level. And so he was a grade 10 at that time. I started as a grade 4, just so you know how that works. And as I began to have, I worked for him directly twice in my career. I moved 9 times. He moved more than that. And as I began to get closer to, he was a grade 12 and I was a grade 10. And he told me when I was a grade 10 that he was going to start doing something that if I was willing, he wanted to do it to pay the future back for all the great stuff that Ford had done for him. And so essentially every day that I got up, he told me to call, he called me, and he told me what he was doing to learn about the business, what papers he was reading, what reports he was reading, what was the first thing he was going to do in the office, what was the last thing he was going to do in the office, so that I could see the pattern of a job that I didn't yet have. And then he also told me, and when you and I are on the same level, that will be my cue that I have paid Ford back for the life that it has given me, and I will retire. And when I became a grade 12 in that system, and he was a 12, he put in his retirement notice.
Wow.
And I still talk to him literally at least twice a week. So I call him my business father. I had 2 fathers,
Right.
and he's my business father.
That's awesome. I mean, just the fact that you would cross paths with him at that time, made it. And it sounds like you've been with him sort of the whole rest of the way.
Well, he's been with you the whole rest of the way, and twice in that career. So my first job in Minneapolis, he was my boss's boss's boss. Mm-hmm. And when I moved to Detroit, he lived in Detroit, but I didn't work for him. And when I moved to Seattle, he was the regional manager. So he had jumped 2 levels from the level that I met him at, and then I was 3 levels ahead of where he met me at. So when I moved to Seattle, he was the top dog in Seattle, right. And I was an entry-level manager in Seattle. That's
something. So that's a mentor extraordinaire. We talk about mentorship. We talk about co-conspirators.
Yeah.
I want to get your thoughts on that a little bit. But that sounds like you couldn't have had a better one.
Yeah, I will give you this as well. I believe that I could not have had a better one in Jerry Carter. I literally called him this morning and said, hey, I haven't talked to you since January 1st, when you called to say happy birthday, that's my birthday, and Happy New Year. And then and I called him a few times and he didn't answer. So I literally said, if you would not have answered today, I was going to get on a plane at some point this weekend and come and check you out because I respect and care for him and his family that much. I will say I could not have had a better mentor, role model, because for me, growing up on the south side of Chicago, my role model, and I had a great childhood. I thought I was rich. I really wasn't. But I had teachers, preachers, and a few small business owners, but no sort of role model about what does it mean to traverse this thing called corporate America. Mm-hmm. So having the fortune of meeting Jerry on the first interview of my last round of round robins with Ford, and having him take interest in me, because he didn't have to. I was just, a kid in the office who he was slowly teaching how to sort of live a different life than the one I knew. My mom's a teacher, my dad's a laborer, and also ran an asphalt paving company that did fairly well, but they didn't read the Wall Street Journal every day, and they didn't read automotive news, and so here I am thinking, I just got out of college, I got to buy some clothes, and I was so proud that I was getting ready to subscribe to Vogue, and Jerry was like, no, you're not, you're going to get automotive news. It's like, really? Why do I want to read that? Because you work in the automotive industry? So, so I was thinking I had a job, and my job at that moment was customer service representative, where everybody starts. So it wasn't occurring to me that, as a customer service representative, you should be learning about the industry that you're in. Yeah. But because I didn't have a role model to tell me that, but Jerry did. So
he realized you had a career. You thought you had a job.
He taught me the difference between a job and a career. My parents were proud that I got a job at the Ford Motor Company.
Sure.
They were a Ford family. But Jerry taught me how to have a career at the Ford Motor Company, not a job.
Yeah. That's great. It's like you said, you put your head down, you go to work, and sometimes you don't pick it up, right? And because you're on the grind and you're getting stuff done. Tell us a little bit about the difference when you have a co-conspirator, you have someone who can sort of help you do this. The difference between putting your head down and grinding and picking your head up and building those relationships. How much time should we be spending doing one or the other?
I think the foundation of doing either is you first do a really good job at the job that you do. If Jerry is to me the best mentor ever, the best co-conspirators I found in my career have all been here in Madison. Because when I think about what this town is, or this city is, town, city, however you want to call it, but what Madison has been for me personally is a place that is small enough that if you want to make impact, you can. And big enough that if you make that impact, you will have a ripple effect inside of Madison and perhaps even outside of Madison. And honestly, I believe, starting with my friends and coworkers and co-conspirators at American Family, this is the best place to find people who have like values, common missions, And when they find people like them, they do a phenomenal job of not only pushing you and challenging you to speak up, to do your part, to partner together, but they do that part of it, but they also give you anchor. And I think that part of the impact that we make as businesses in this community and in the world is not just about the balance sheet, and you want to take care of that, but about the ripple effect that that balance sheet creates. Not necessarily just community giving even. And when you think about the number of jobs that all of you represent in our community, that to some degree is this act of being a co-conspirator. When you think about how we partner with each other in this community, when you say, we are American Family Insurance, I wasn't here when we made this decision, and somebody from the University of Wisconsin stops by and says, we deserve a children's hospital here. And the leadership at that time says, we're up for that. And then the leadership 20 years later, right, Yasser? 20 years later says we're up for that again. That is what I think is unique about a place like that. Or a community member and golf pro says, I think we should have a championship here to help raise money for the Children's Hospital and the many other charities in our community that do good work. And they stop by and speak to a CEO in a company, and the company says, we're up for that. And so to me, when I think about co-conspirators, they are a different brand of a mentor. There is a person who can show you the way and a person who can give you the tools. And then there are people who will stand side by side with you to help you and them achieve greater results than you ever thought you could, or maybe even imagine was possible. And so I would submit to you that American Family has been the greatest co-conspirator. I actually was thinking about this conversation this morning, and I would say that even though I'm at 17 years with Ford and 17 with American Family, I really learned how to, I grew up at American Family, you know, even though I'm older than to be old enough to be, not saying I'm growing up anywhere, you know, for the last 17 years, but I grew up into a business leader who understands the impact of what business can do and should do for the community. In part because of working for the great people at American Family, in part because of the fact that American Family has this great canvas called Madison that we live and work and have our being in, so to speak, and in part because of the industry I get to serve in. So I can't really sit on this stage and not talk about what we do as a company at American Family. And I think we all have either a passive relationship with our insurance company, whether it's your auto insurance company or your home insurance company or your business insurance company. And I'm going to count those here. I'm not going to talk health insurance at this point because we don't do that business. But when you think about what the category does and how I discovered it, you know, kind of serendipitously from a phone call that was made to me. I believe that the core product of what we do in insurance is one that is about conspiracy. So no wonder this is a place that people have this sort of natural knack for people partnering together to do more together than they can do apart. So when you think about what this industry does, and when you think about even how we position ourselves, we really believe that we're in this business to inspire, protect, and restore dreams. And the restoration part of it is what this industry does significantly well. So. Well,
let's talk about that, because rumor has it that you and your team really are the ones who came up with the Dream Fearlessly, that brand positioning, and it's kind of making insurance cool.
Well, thank you.
You know, and so that's an industry you never thought you'd work in. Not only are you more than working in it, you just made it cool. Talk about how you landed on that.
I would say I can take some credit for it, but really all I did was look inside of an industry and a company, and specifically the company of American Family Insurance. And because I had fresh eyes, so this speaks to how do you think about who you spend your time with, what kind of people you hire, and do you hire people that are just like you, or is it there's some benefit of getting some people that have a diverse point of view, new eyeballs, whatever. I was new to the industry, and so when I walked in the building and saw what it actually does do, when I saw what the people had already created, and when I just sat back and thought about it, I was like, why don't anybody know about this company? I mean, my dad knew about it. He sang me the jingle. But why don't people know about the company, and why don't people have a different relationship with the industry? And I'm a brand person, and I'm a business leader, and I study businesses. I study two things, businesses and sports, in general. Those are my two things. And I study both in order to apply it to business. So I think sports is the other thing that deserves a lot of study, and specifically football, and basketball sometimes too, and baseball when the season is at the end of the season.
Well, then we are not going to run out of questions, because I got a bunch of questions.
So, but when you think, all I did was look inside the company and say, what is the ultimate thing that this thing does? It is a safety net. So why do you buy insurance? You buy it as a safety net. I used to think, well, you buy it because you can't get out of the closing if you don't buy it. And in the car business, you can't get off that lot with that dealer's car if you don't get you some insurance, because Tom's not letting you leave if you do not have insurance. So that's not going to happen. But if you think about it from the consumer's point of view, and the people who really need insurance are really the people who worked hard, saved for that car, saved for that house, and if the wind blows too hard, if a hurricane comes out of the water, if a fire comes down the mountain, they cannot afford to buy that thing again out of just their wealth in their 401ks or whatever, then those are the people who really need insurance. So really what insurance is a safety net for the American dream. So I just looked at what they were doing and had different eyeballs to reposition it. So
No, that's...
And it is a cool industry, I think, so.
You would know, I think all of us in here, we're here to hear about it tonight. But like you said, your first blush was like, I don't know what's up. But I can tell you, not just myself, but there are people who are here tonight, and there's people who are not here tonight, that look at the industry different because of this campaign.
And because the industry over my tenure here has spent I was going to say a crap ton of money, a lot of money advertising. So when you think about, when I joined this industry, it was a big deal that it was a $4 billion ad market. And today, there are two competitors who spend more than that together in the insurance industry. And when I joined this industry, I came out of automotive most recently, who spends a lot of money as well. And the year I joined that industry, the automotive industry was going through sort of the 2008 crisis. And so in that particular year, the automotive insurance providers were going to spend more in advertising than the actual people advertising cars and trucks. So the car business is notably spends a lot of money advertising too, but that year was sort of a big changing point, because that year the category spent a lot more. So, but most of those people spend to sort of remember, which is why you spend money on advertising. I want you to remember my name. I want to be the first person you call, all that good stuff. And we, American Family, take a different stand, and that stance is we actually want you to understand the value we provide, and we're not willing to spend a whole bunch of money. It's a lot of money in this category, so we want to make it memorable, and all of the category is very memorable, mostly from a funny standpoint, and we want to be memorable for the emotional connection of what it is we actually do in your lives every day.
Right on. And you've been there. Let's see. You started with the company, and we're gonna break the whole 17-year tie thing. We're gonna have 18 or more. So we're gonna beat Ford Motor Company.
Yeah,
but you joined the company in 2009, was it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Moved here in 2015.
2014-ish. So
okay.
I worked here full time.
Okay.
So I had a condo here, and I was commuting back and forth to Michigan, because honestly, I didn't think I was going to stay the whole time. Mm-hmm. I thought I was going to stay like 2 years, 3 years, and as careers go, and because the person who bought me here she had the job that would be my next job, quite frankly. So But as careers go, I joined as advertising director. She chose to go do something else. I eventually became our VP of marketing. I moved here when that happened.
Okay.
And then since that time, I've served in whatever role the company has asked me to serve in. So I've done marketing, I've done chief operating officer. I now serve as president. I worked on the direct side of our business. So it's been a fun ride.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully it's not over. We have you
It's
for
not
many
over.
more years in this community and in this town. So you've seen some changes in the industry, I would imagine, over that time. What are the biggest changes that you've seen? Maybe on the marketing and promotion side, maybe on the product itself and the products you.
I think the biggest change in the industry is most recent. And most recently, so post 2020, coming out of the pandemic, there's been inflation and inflationary effects that impacted the industry. Lots of impacts that impacted the industry sort of going into the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic. And on top of that, all of the climate issues that really this industry is skilled at dealing with. So when you think about it, you think about how more often you hear about tornadoes, how more often you hear about named storms, how often you hear about things like wildfire in places that you generally didn't hear about them. Just the catastrophic events that impact the industry have led to consumers having a much more direct understanding of what the insurance market is and their relationship to it. And so I think most recently in our industry, the industry itself is dealing with the fact that we were a passively engaged product. So I'm going to play a little bit with the audience and say, when you got up this morning, you did not think about your insurance company. You thought about a lot of different brands. You thought about Starbucks. I went to Starbucks this morning. You might have thought about the brand of clothing you were wearing. You might have thought about the brand of car that you got into. You have a much more intimate relationship with all of the other products that you serve, that you use. And yet this category called insurance is the watchman that sits on the wall that generally protects just about everything that you do. But you generally have a passive relationship. Over the last several years, I believe it has come to the forefront of the consumer mindset for a number of reasons, most of which are not positive, price increases and other things like that, that customers are now beginning to sort of think about, like, do I have the right carrier? What is this product that I'm paying for? Should I be paying for a higher price? And I think that the industry is at an interesting point right now where I think it's critically important that we actually take this moment to, again, make sure customers understand the value they have and what one brand provides versus another. So I think it's early days on that too.
So have you seen the work that's been put in on the brand building, on the messaging, that's coinciding with climate change, et cetera? Are you guys finding growth in some product categories because people are now looking and going, you know what, I'm thinking about insurance differently and I'm thinking I'm moving over?
I think there's a different way to think about it rather than talk about growth or things like that is really, so we talk about brand and I've talked about brand, but the real moment of truth in this category is when something happens. And so I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the service end of our business. So the moment of truth in our business is when you have to file a claim.
Right.
And so thinking of it from that point of view, for us as a company, that is our shining moment. That is when we stand the tallest. That is what everybody in the building is dedicated to. So of course we want to grow on the front side of the business because we won't be there to protect you if we weren't your carrier. But what we really take great pride in is the number of customers and the lives that we get to help put back together and the way in which we do it as a company. And I think we do that, and the data says we do it as well or better than anybody else.
So speaking of dreaming, anybody who's ever been, part of a startup or a young company could only hope that that company would thrive, right, and would be around for 100 years. Now you've been there for 17 plus, but the company itself will be 100 years old. What, in 27?
In 2027, American Family will be 100 years old.
So,
which I think deserves a round of applause.
Oh, right on. Big birthday plans? We got big birthday plans?
Yasser's working on some of those over there, but we will figure out how we celebrate that. But I mean, just taking it all in when you think about. So I've been fortunate that I will have, by the time American Family has its 100th birthday, I will have been at 2 brands that at the time that they have their 100th anniversary, because I was at Ford when it turned 100 as well.
Okay.
But when you think about what companies get to turn 100. We got quite a few of them in Wisconsin. You probably know that list. But you join the likes of Ford and Disney and Delta. I think American Airlines is turning 100. And it takes a lot for a company to stay around that number of years, and a lot of service and a lot of belief in customers. So customers will not let you stay 100 years if you do not do what you're supposed to do for those customers, which I think is a testament to who those brands are.
That's great. That's great. So you're the secret sauce. So if anybody wants their company to stick around 100 years,
I did not say that.
I don't know where somebody's got a microphone, and we're gonna take some questions from the audience. We can shift to sports at any moment if we don't get any questions. Oh, there's a question. We got a question up front. Oh, you're grabbing the mic. So while she's doing that. Grew up in Chicago. You're in Wisconsin. What are we doing for our NFL affiliation? What are we doing there?
When I'm in Wisconsin, I do as Wisconsin people do. And American Family is a proud partner of the Green Bay Packers.
Yes.
So there you have it.
She's a true politician.
And I will also say this. I had a lot, Yasser's over there as a Chicago Bears fan, so we got a lot of sad Bears fans right now. But I will say that since Packers are out, and we all have to not like the Patriots, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes.
So go Hawks. Go Seahawks. So I'm actually a Seahawks fan. And
you spent some time in Seattle. So
I spent some time in Seattle, and I had a very close friend that I grew up with. My family is from Chicago, but they came up in the Great Migration from Mississippi. I spent every summer of my life in Mississippi, and I have a friend that I had in Mississippi. I've known him since he was 5 and I was 2, and he played for the Buffalo Bills, and I became a Bills fan. And then he got traded to the Seahawks, and I became a Seahawks fan. And I've been a Seahawks fan since that time. So I will be rooting for the Seahawks next weekend. So.
Right on. Question right here.
Yeah.
You got somebody from Seattle back there?
Yeah, go Hawks.
Go Seahawks.
Go Seahawks.
First of all, thank you so much for speaking today. This has been very inspiring. And I want to mention I wrote down the word serendipity before you said it twice. And something about that was kind of great. But my question for you is, what advice do you have for a young professional navigating corporate America right now?
I would say, I don't know where you work and if they're in the office or out of the office, but I would say to the extent that you can, figure out the opportunity to be present with people who have the job that you want to learn from, and just stay curious. So the thing I think is hard for our young people, young professionals today, is that the way we work has changed rather dramatically. So the serendipitous opportunity to be standing in a lunch line and talking to somebody who will tell you about this job you never knew existed at Ford Motor Company. Like, I started in their general management rotation. I would have never known about an opportunity to go, like, I thought that's where I'm going to stay, is in this general management rotation. It's going to be sales, it's going to be marketing, it's going to be finance, it's going to be distribution. But in standing in a line, I met a guy who worked in a plant, and I worked in the Wixom assembly plant once. So I can say that I know how to run a big automotive plant, and I know what that life's about because I've done that because it was serendipitous that I was in that line. So I think to the extent that you can spend time with people doing the work that you potentially are interested in, I think you do that. The second thing is one of the things that I try always to do is find a way to say yes versus tending always toward a no. Meaning, and that can be challenging because sometimes yes means that you you get yourself in too many projects, and that's not good if you can't master them all. But I have always said yes to whatever opportunity somebody put in front of me, including Lisa saying, will you just come and do this interview? Even though I was like, there's no way I want to go to Wisconsin. The last time I went, it was cold, and We almost lost that game. I can't even remember who we were playing. But anyway, I said yes to this thing she just offered me, which was just come study for the job, come show them what a good marketer looks like. So I always say that one of the golden rules of being in corporate America is figure out a way to get proximate to other people that are not doing what you do, and figure out a way to say yes. So if somebody says, can you take this on? It's a little side project. I used to say yes all the time. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. Now it doesn't make for, you will do a better job at this, but it didn't make for a very balanced life, but it was a different time period than we sit in today. But I say learn to say yes. And the last thing I'll say is keep your curiosity about the world outside of the place you work, because there is some insight, some nugget that you can bring from the outside that will likely help you do a better job on the inside, so to speak. So my entire career at American Family has been shaped by me not thinking like an insurance person. Like I think like a car person, a fast food person, I'm really into Starbucks, a sports person. So all of that stuff kind of mashes together and creates a different level of questions that if I was just heads down, thinking about actuarial tables, which is the foundation of what we do in insurance. So You're welcome.
Great question. Any more questions out there? I know there are. Right here.
Hey there. My name is Giovanni, and I'm with Understate. So we're a community for entrepreneurship, and so I work with a lot of businesses. So you're in marketing. Marketing is really important, maybe the most important for a business, any business. I'm curious, in your time as a marketer, you've probably seen a lot of trends, and currently we live in the world of social media, and so it's really easy to get out there, but there's a lot of noise. What would you say is some good advice that any brand can take, whether it be American Family or your local plumber, to get their brand out there?
I think the very first thing is find out where your customers are. So social media is great. I'm not on it, but our marketing team is on it. So I sort of pulled back a little bit from social media because it can be a toxic place. I am on Instagram, but I'm not on Facebook. I am on LinkedIn. I'm not on Twitter, X, and there's a bunch of other ones out there too now. But I think the very first thing any business should think about is where are my customers, and follow them. And follow them in your most authentic way. And so it might be that you should be on TikTok. I'm definitely not on TikTok. So it might be that you should be on TikTok, and it might be that you should be on Instagram, and it might be that you can find them on Facebook. But if you think your customers are there, figure out how to be there in your most authentic way. The second thing I would say is that a brand or a company, a marketer who ladders back to three things generally stays out of trouble. What's good for the customer, what's good for the business, and what's good for the brand. And there are a lot of fads that can come along, but if it's not good for the customer, not good for the business, not good for the brand, and I always say not good for the team, then don't do it. It's probably good advice in a world right now, because the same things that can help you accelerate people knowing about you are also the same things that could help you get into a lot of trouble and get things taken out of context. And I think that's a real risk for companies and people right now, because we live in a highly charged environment. So if you can stay authentic to who you are, stay authentic to what the business needs to talk about, and what's good for the brand, what's good for the customer, what's good for the business, and what's good for the team, I think is a rubric that can work for just about any business. I hope that helped you.
Hi, Telisa. You tell a very powerful story of the importance of mentor-protege relationships. Have you had the opportunity to pay it forward, and have you had the opportunity to create an environment where mentor-protege is welcome at American Family?
Yes, one of the conversations I had this morning with Jerry Carter, the person I talked about earlier, was because I have a scholarship that I named after my father. that he runs at a program down in, or he's in the Orlando, Florida area. And so, yes, I am very proud of my literal nieces and nephews and my pretend. I'm a Southside Chicago girl. I'm a person of African American descent. And if you know us, you know we got all kind of nieces and nephews and you aunties to people you are not really related to. So I have a whole slew of people who call me Auntie Telisa that I am not related to, and some of whom I haven't met. But I'm very, very proud of the tradition that my family has, and I played a big role in it. And in my family, my grandparents started this. They were both from Mississippi. They moved to Chicago during the Great Migration. They both were, my grandmother worked in the school, my grandfather was a sharecropper until they moved to Chicago. One of the things we do in our family is we do something called a trunk party, where I've been being taught to pay it forward as a mentor since that time. Do you guys know what a trunk party is? You do, okay. So you do too. So it's might be a community thing. So in my family, a trunk party is something where whenever somebody is graduated from high school and they are going to college, you fill their trunk up with the stuff that they need for college so that they have a great start, because by 9 times out of 10, they are going to college by hook or crook, and we need the family to step up and step up to help them. So my grandmother, once I was probably 5 to 7 years into living, being a professional, she pulled me to the side and said, my job for the next generation, so I am one of 15 grandchildren, the next generation has 29 great-grandchildren, most of whom are substantially older than, because I'm one of the younger ones, they're older than my son is 14 years old, but I have, that next generation has 30-year-olds in it, and, you know, maybe even some 35-year-olds by now. And so my grandmother pulled me to the side and said, you've done pretty well in your life. They call me Jitterbug. And I go, yes, ma'am, I have. And she said, so your job at the trunk party is you give the computers. My sister, who also did pretty well, her job is to give the printers. And so, and then everybody else who hasn't done as well, their job was to give the paper, the laundry detergent, the sheets, the whatever they need to go away to school and be successful and not come back home. So it's like the tradition. And so I'm very proud of the students, the young people, and then you grow students because your nieces and nephews and your family members introduce their friends when they come back. So I'm very proud of the fact that we've been able to do that in my family. Now, I believe that American Family has been a phenomenal, again, this is the place that I found all my co-conspirators. So American Family has been the place where not only can you mentor people, but you can create the environment where we say that we want to be an inclusive culture where everybody can thrive. And I can say without any reservation that the company lives up to that standard 120,000%, honestly. So thank you for that question.
Great question. I've got one right there. Gonna make you work. 2 more? 2 more.
Hi. So it kind of transitions well to your last statements. Can you just elaborate a little bit more as far as how you, especially as you've risen up in levels, like you were more a day-to-day manager and you had a lot of contact with your team, but how have you been able to really retain a really strong culture and, you know, bringing in the concept of a dream to your employees as well?
Yeah, so you don't do any of this alone, I would say. So I think that as a company, one of the things I think we've done well is embed we often say that our strategy drives our culture, and I would say that American Family lives that. So this notion of is not a marketing concept, it's actually a business concept, that this is our mission, this is what we do, and it's sort of embedded through HR and embedded to other places. But I think your other part of your question is, you've risen to these levels, how do you stay connected with the front line? Right? So I personally think that that's one of the the habits I've learned across my career is to go wherever the cash register rings or where the person that is closest to the customer and spend time with them. And we actually do that as a whole company now. Our HR team and training and development team has recently created a new program where all of us spend time where the cash register rings, or where the customer meets. So we spend time in claims, we spend time in our call centers, we spend time in our agent's office. So every executive in the company went through this process to do that. On top, before we even got to that, one of my work habits when I was moved from marketing into operations, because I didn't grow up in the industry, one of the first things I did, even before I became our VP of marketing, I found a set of agents, because they make the cash register ring, that I just called on a regular basis. When I was promoted to become our chief operating officer, one of the things I started doing then is 3 days a week, and sometimes more than that, on my drive into work and my drive home from work, I speak with people that are actually on the front line. So I speak with agents. I now have a list, because they will text me and say, can you give me a call on your way home? You should talk to this guy. He's never going to call you, but you should talk to him because he's experiencing something. And so that is my way of staying close to the front line. I also try to make myself available to our entry-level employees. We have a program where we onboard those people. All of our executives speak to those groups of people who are joining the company. And if they ask to have lunch with me, my assistant doesn't like it, but I generally try to accept it because I'm way too busy. But I generally try to reserve Fridays. So if they want to come over and come to the cafeteria in our national headquarters and have lunch with me on a Friday, I'm generally open to that. Just because it's good, it's a good way, not just for me to know what they're going through, but for me to actually see the world from a different point of view. And as I said, one of the pillars of success, I think, for everybody is to remain curious and to read and to think outside of the thing that you normally do, to challenge yourself with what history has already taught us and spend some time with the people who are the futurists, who think that they know where we're going. I think that that is part of the fun of being in business, or just being in the human race, so to speak.
That's great. Last question back here.
Hi, I know you talk a lot about thinking about and considering your end user needs, the end customer. And I know that's not lip service, like I know that to be true. And I'm really curious if you can put on or look into your crystal ball and tell me, what does customer engagement or serving the user needs in P&C, what does that look like 5 to 10 years from now? What will stay the same, and what's probably going to change?
What will stay the same is ultimately, at the moment of truth, the customer is going to want to connect with you in the way that is best for them. Sometimes, and we already see it today, so sometimes a moment of truth for us is claims process. Sometimes people will file their claim from start to finish on in an app. Sometimes they will call a call center. Sometimes they will actually pick up the phone and call their agent. And a lot of times people are more complex, they want to talk to a person. If I were to look 5 years into the future, it would be AI enabled, but the same core processes will be the same. So our frontline employees will have more time to actually spend with the customer, to understand what they're going through and understand the details of the claim, because they will have an AI assistant that will help them to capture what the customer is actually saying, and they'll be able to go back and do that. I think the future in customer engagement in this category, and I've been saying this since I came here, and I really believe that we are living into that now. I do believe that insurance has largely been a reactive work process. So something bad happens and I go back and help you fix it. I do believe that we are now at a point, and you've seen some of it over the last several years, where one of the values that a great insurance company will provide, and I believe we are a great insurance company, is we will help people prevent those things from happening. And it will be to their benefit and to ours. So rather than be the company you call when things get out of whack, am I your partner that sits beside you through our technology or some other technology that we tap into that helps the bad thing from happening. It already exists today. So my house will tell you when you should actually worry about the temperature on the bottom floor, which is the basement, because we don't want pipes to freeze. We have this technology today. There is technology today that can listen to your house's signature and tell you if something has changed in your HVAC system. And that can tell you if something has changed even in your what you have inside of your home. So as I look into the future, I think that this category, again, develops more strength in being the side-by-side partner in proactive insurance protection versus reactive restoration. And that will be better for the customer because the more we can help prevent things from happening, the less it is for you to insure that thing from being restored, if that makes sense.
Well, you guys planned that. That was an awesome answer. Great last question. Awesome answer. Join me in thanking Telisa for her time tonight. And save the date, April 8th, for our first power couple, Don and Julie Fussner, who you know Julie, right? See? That's a springboard. Anybody looking for a springboard for your career? AmFam's your next stop. April 8th is our next stop here. Don Fussner and Julie Fussner. Don, CEO of Johnsonville, and Julie, CEO of Culver's Franchising. So we'll see you guys then.